Hello and welcome to Naturally Scott. I'm Scott Harris. This is episode 24, 24 podcasts we've done, and it has been a blast for me. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Today's guest is David Rothenberg. If you haven't heard of David before, it's a fascinating story. I first saw him on a movie called The Loneliest Whale and contacted him. He agreed to be on the podcast. David is a philosopher and a clarinetist. And not only is he a clarinetist, but he plays clarinets with wild animals, including humpback whales, which is what we talk about mostly today. And at the end of the podcast, and it's a great conversation, the field notes today is going to just be me sharing some of David's music of him playing with birds and playing with whales. So I think you're going to have a blast. It's a little different than what we're used to. He is a naturalist, he is a birder, he's a clarinet player, he's a philosopher. He's a blast to talk to. So you guys enjoy this, and when you're done watching this, hang tight, watch and listen to the field notes. You're going to enjoy those as well. Take care, and as always, I appreciate you listening and watching. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Naturally Scott. I'm Scott Harris, and we've got one today that's just a little bit different than the ones we've done in the past. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I want to welcome David Rothenberg to the show. David, I was introduced to David, not in person, but by film for a role that he played in a movie called 52, The Loneliest Whale in the World. And we'll talk David into telling us a little bit about that as we go on. It was a fascinating film, which I happened to see flying back from California on my having looked at humpback whales. So it was just an odd coincidence because the film's been out for a little bit. And I had 2 or 3 friends mention it inside of a 2-week period and said they'd seen it on flights. And I looked, and sure enough, Delta was kind enough to offer it. So that is where I saw David. That is where I began to track him down. And now we're going to talk about why I found him so fascinating and why I think you will as well. David is a self-described philosopher and clarinetist, which I think is one of the more unique combinations. If I was still collecting business cards, that would be a bitchin' one to have. David Rothenberg, professor of philosophy and clarinet. But David is a professor of music and philosophy at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and he focuses on animal sounds in music, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is what we're going to learn. And I'm really, really kind of excited about that. And we're going to talk about some of his books. I've got Why Birds Sing, The 1,000-Mile Song, which we'll probably focus on a bit, Survival of the Beautiful, Bug Music, and Nightingales in Berlin. And it is interesting to me. I just finished doing some work with Ken Kaufman. I don't know if you know Ken or...
Yeah, of course.
You're right. And so Ken's famous for Kingbird Highway and the Kaufman field guides. And I will acknowledge my ignorance. I did not realize he'd also written field guides on mammals and insects and other things. And so it is interesting to me. We're going to talk a lot about cetaceans today, but there is much more to David and his work than that. And unfortunately, there are just a little bit of restrictions on time. So David, if you would, tell us how somebody becomes a professor of philosophy and clarinet.
I love how you described it as self-described. You can just say, I am a clarinetist and never even played a clarinet.
You really can. You can claim to be anything, I guess. But I've seen you play the clarinet.
Yes, well, thank you for that fine introduction. I'm so glad that The Loneliest Whale is being shown on planes. That makes me very happy to hear that. I'm sure the director, Josh Zeman, would also be happy. He probably doesn't even know it's being shown on planes.
Well, and I will tell you that I had to get up and walk back and go to the men's room, and I was not the only person watching the movie on the. So I can't speak for the rest of the world. I mean, I owned a marketing company for 40 years, and I love data. But I will tell you that a reasonably large percentage of Delta flyers are interested in The Loneliest Whale.
That's good. The Loneliest Whale is a good story. It's about the last of his kind, a whale that has no one to sing to, no one to talk to. This kind of story is always appealing. And so how do you get to do these things? I think it goes back to when my parents moved us from New York City to Connecticut, and I just wandered around the woods a lot, listening to sounds, kind of keeping to myself. And then I also heard that nearby there lived actually someone else who played music with whales. The saxophonist Paul Winter. So when I was in high school, I learned that somebody else was doing this, and this sounded kind of cool. That was already a few years after moving to Connecticut, which was when I was 6. But by the time I was in high school, I learned that someone lived nearby who played music with whales. And I decided I should get to know this person. So.
And he was an inspiration for you.
Yeah, I just saw him a few weeks ago. I went to interview Paul Winter. He's 85. I was a little worried that he was going to seem like kind of older and diminished or something. He was so energetic. He was in this huge barn. He had boxes of his whole life laid out, and no one else knows what's in any box but him. He's doing it all himself, going on
And
25 projects that he's going to do, like full of energy. He was truly an inspiration. So he's still doing it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And I can understand the trepidation. I mean, for a lot of us, it's a little bit dangerous to meet our heroes, whether they're sports or entertainment.
Yeah.
And then to run into friends that you haven't seen in a long time.
Exactly. Yeah. Go to reunions. Go back to your high school reunion. Very dangerous.
Yeah, mine was just a few weeks ago. I didn't go. I'd been traveling too much, so I stayed home. But I got pictures back, from friends that were there,
Right.
and there were pictures of people I hadn't seen in 30 or 40 years. And I thought, oh my God, these people have aged. Thank goodness I haven't.
Yeah. How come we're the same age as these old people?
Yeah, that's what I said to my wife. I don't understand. I'm 17.
All right.
These people appear to be late 60s.
See what's
So-
going on exactly.
Now,
But, these whales live to be a few hundred years old, so it's kind of sobering.
yes,
As a species, they've been around for millions of years, longer than humans have been here. So that's also a kind of sobering fact when you.
it really is. Yeah, so, but going back to Mr. Winter and when you were 6 years old, in between, wasn't there something with a hermit thrush and Miles Davis and
Yeah, there's
another?
a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. The important thing to note is that for many years, I didn't do anything with this topic after in high school being interested in it. You should go play music with animals. I didn't really do it for many years. It had to do with another person, the same generation as Paul Winter, the Canadian composer R. Murray Schafer, who is known for popularizing the term the soundscape, that we could study the soundscape as like a landscape. And he passed away a few years ago in his 80s. But he started this whole study, and when he turned 60 years old, a little bit younger than I am now, there was a big conference in his honor in Canada, 1993, Banff Center for the Arts. And there hundreds of people came who were interested in music and nature. And I realized, there are a lot of people doing this. And this led to, I got a lot of these people to write things about what they were doing. One of my earliest books was an edited book called The Book of Music and Nature, which had all different people making this connection and readings and things I had found. And one of the people in that book, Michael Pestel, who was an art professor at the time, he said, you really should go to Pittsburgh. You should come play with the birds in the National Aviary. Now, you're a bird person. You probably know there is a National Aviary in Pittsburgh. And so we went in there before dawn and started walking around, listening to these birds and trying to play along with them. I had a clarinet. Michael Pestel had a flute. Most of the birds weren't so interested in us, except one, the white-crested laughing thrush. And the white-crested laughing thrush really seemed to want to jam along with me and play along with the clarinet. And this video clip does exist on YouTube. You can watch it. It's called Wild Bird Jazz. And laughing thrushes are known for their interactive qualities. It has to do with the fact they use song differently than most other birds. But this bird was really ready to engage. And this made me realize, okay, this is interesting. You could go out and play music with birds or other animals. You could go out and do this. Let's see what happens. And that started me on this renovated Paul Winter-esque quest 2 decades after I first, thought about it. It took that amount of time to get back.
And you haven't looked back since?
Well, then I started going, I wrote this book on birdsong called Why Birds Sing, was probably my most popular of my modestly successful books. This is the most successful. It's not super popular, but enough to come out.
At least modest.
To come out in many languages. And there was a BBC TV show based on it. And then I said I wanted to do whales next. And the publisher said, what do you mean? What do you mean whales? I said, they sing. What do you mean whales sing? Oh, they do. And people didn't used to know about this. They discovered it in the 50s and 60s. So we can trace what happened when this was discovered.
And now
that's that. I did the whale book was second. Then I did one on bugs and then nightingales. And the last one was about underwater pond sounds. They get ever more obscure. And so, the next one's a little less obscure maybe, but they definitely, they don't follow the advice of marketing professionals, shall we say. They follow what needs to happen, what needs to be written, what no one else could do but me. Those are the things I have to do. Otherwise, let someone else do it.
there's certain logic to that, I suppose. Right. My fear is there might not be anything that I can do that no one else can do. So
they have this podcast. Nobody else can do this.
Well, thank you. Hopefully that's a compliment. Hey, let's back up. You mentioned the 50s and the 60s, and you and I are roughly the same age. Actually, you're a little younger than I am. I'm 68.
Yeah, I'm 63.
Okay, but the 60s seem to be the beginning of awareness, if not understanding, when we're talking about whales, and I think in particular humpback whales. And I think I learned through you, you were kind enough to send me your book. I believe you get the credit for this, but if not, somebody's not getting credit they deserve. But Pete Seeger and Crosby Nash, James Taylor, the band Yes, which got me through a lot of high school study sessions, and the Partridge Family.
That was a good one. Yeah, that one I remember as a kid.
Those they all incorporated whale sounds
Because
into.
whale sounds were like this was the in thing, you know. This it was part of the 60s. Yeah, yes, there you go. That's a reissue. That's not the original one because that
No, somewhere over time I lost my original one. I had one as a child of the 70s that was required, and
right. It's in the
but
Simpsons.
somewhere it got lost, and so you get credit for an eBay sale for the reissue.
Yeah, so the thing is there's a trailer that still exists for The Loneliest Whale, which was never used, but I made it up. I told Josh, this is how the trailer is going to go. It's going to be like a James Bond film. These guys are on a submarine and they are listening and they hear something and they say, "My God, this sound is coming from whales." And one guy looks at the other and says, "We can't let people find out about this." You can find this trailer online about all this stuff that's true. For 10 years, they didn't tell anyone about it. It was classified information that whales were singing. Obviously, this is going to be useful somehow, so we can't let people find out about this. But by the end of the 60s, Frank Watlington, who recorded these sounds of Bermuda, he said, "This is just so beautiful. Everyone should know about this. Come on, guys. 10 years. We have enough other problems. Let people listen to whale songs. It's 1969. Things are happening in the world. Whales have to be there." And so they said, okay, yeah, they can hear about it. And so they put out this record, and it was surprisingly popular, the best-selling nature recording of all time. And so it continues to fascinate people at the time, all manner of pop stars and classical composers and media characters. They all wanted to have something to say about this. It was one of those things that appeared and took over. And a lot more can be said about this period of time and our openness towards the animal consciousness and everything else. But whale songs were there. And whale songs, the discovery that humpback whales, this particular species, sang a long, beautiful, organized, patterned song that really had this emotional content that would drive people to tears. This really impressed many of us and is a wonderful thing to have discovered. And later, just a few years later, it's one of the things that led to the world being interested in stopping the killing of these whales and a kind of positive environmental story that came from the music of nature that got people to say, "Oh, we can't kill animals that sing like this." It's really kind of what happened.
There is a magic to it. I mean, my original career before I decided that I needed to make a couple extra dollars was marine biology, and I love marine mammals. I still do. I'm writing a book about them now,
Mhm.
and so I've been off doing some traveling. In the last year, I've seen humpbacks in Southern California, Murray, California, and Alaska, and it's just been a blessing to me to be able to see them. And with the sound and the music, I in anticipation of our conversation, and thank you for reigniting that in me, I picked up the album that I showed you,
Yeah.
and my son and I have found ourselves. We've got a screened-in porch here. We live on a lake, and we have found ourselves a couple of evenings when it's after dark with no lights on. We light up a cigar and turn on the album, and it is an album. I like old school albums, and we sit and listen and don't say a word. It is stunning. I'm reading a book right now. I don't know if you're familiar with it, by Christine Webb, like you, a Harvard professor, and she is releasing a book or has released it. Anyway, she's going to be a guest on the show in a couple of weeks. She wrote a book called The Arrogant Ape, and you and I are the arrogant apes. And she talks about how many other creatures, including in her view, some plants are sentient beings, and how we are far more closely tied to not just the primates, and not even just the mammals and the marine, you think of dolphins and whales and whatnot, but to all creatures. And as I read that, I'm reading it slowly to try to bring it all in. There's a lot to be said for that. And then when you go back and you watch, for example, the 52 movie, and and the connection that was made and some of the things that happened in some of your writings. And I think it could very well be an eye opener that, maybe we're not the supreme species and maybe we're not the only species, as some of us like to think, and everything else is just subservient. And so some of the magical things that you and others have done in working with the animals and getting us to look and think and listen in different ways goes beyond just having a joint and listen to an album. It's critically important, I think, to our growth as a species.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible and important that here's this undersea mammal that sings a long, complex, organized song in the range that humans can hear it. You don't have to slow it down or speed it up for humans to hear this song. It's not true with all marine mammals, but humpback whales, the range of sounds they make are within the range of human hearing. The pace of the song is within the range of things that can touch us directly. And that's one of the things that brings us together. The structure and organization of the song, you can find parallels between it, definitely slowed down by comparison with the song of a complex patterned bird song like Nightingales that exist in Europe and not here. But there's a lot of pattern things that are similar that I showed in one video you can watch on YouTube. You speed up the whale song, it sounds a lot like a nightingale. Slow down the nightingale, it sounds a lot like a humpback whale. Why? What does this mean? Survival of the Beautiful, the book I wrote that's not so much about sound, I talk about that. It's like independently evolution moved towards certain kinds of patterns, and it's kind of convergent. It's not necessarily for any reason. We don't know why these two animals have much more complicated musical activity than their close relatives. We don't know. It didn't have to be that way. If you wind back evolution, do it again, it's going to evolve different creatures. But the possibility is there that extreme, kind of excessive aesthetic behavior can evolve in many different ways, which is pretty cool to think about.
It really is. So tell us why whales, and there seems to be a bit of a focus on the humpbacks. Maybe that's
Only the
because
humpbacks have this
of their songs.
Only the humpbacks have this long pattern complex song. And every animal is a world into itself when it comes to aesthetics, something that Charles Darwin recognized very well. He mostly wrote about birds in this context, in Descent of Man. There's 2 chapters on birds, and he says, look, birds have a natural aesthetic sense. That's why they've evolved beautiful feathers and beautiful songs. They have this sense of aesthetics. This is not like natural selection. It's not efficient. It's not adaptation to have this stuff going on. It's something else. And that's when he posited the idea of sexual selection. Some stuff just evolves because one sex likes it a lot. If the females didn't like the song, it wouldn't evolve. The peacock wouldn't have this giant, hopeless tail that it has to carry around if the females just didn't like it. Now, in modern evolutionary theory, there's a counter argument to this that says it's really all adaptation. It's called the Zahavi handicap hypothesis. The peacock's tail is a handicap because he can barely fly, but he still can fly. Look at me, I'm so tough, I can still carry this huge, useless, beautiful tail around. I don't find that argument especially convincing, and a lot of people don't, but it's the mainstream one you're going to hear in biology class. Why don't I find it convincing? It's beside the point. It's like why are some humans like really good musicians? They do it to attract girls. The guys just play guitar really fast and girls like that. Okay, maybe they like it, but it's not why they're playing the guitar so fast. There's a lot of other ways you could do it. It's moving away from the phenomenon to try and say what it's for. Not everything can be understood by figuring out what it's for. Like, it doesn't matter to me so much what humpback whale song is for, but it's beautiful and interesting. And look, it evolved. Let's understand it. Let's delve deep into it. Let's play along with it. Let's try and join in to try and learn it by participating with it. I don't even know why it exists or why I like doing it, but it's interesting. And I think the animals are with that. They are not doing everything for functional purposes either. That's a misunderstanding of evolution. Maybe we're on a sidetrack here, maybe not. But the fact is that
you picked the track.
The beauty evolves, as my friend Richard Prum likes to say, famous evolutionary biologist who wrote The Evolution of Beauty. Also a man obsessed with birds. You could interview him.
I will make a note of that. Thank you.
Also a friend of mine from college where I thought he was like insufferably nerdy, just like me. But, that's why this guy's really into it. But he's an incredible scientist and has delved deep into the more abstract and kind of radical idea that beauty just evolves. It doesn't have a purpose. He's leading the movement against the handicap hypothesis and the fact that everything's really adaptation.
Well,
To show that,
if we get away from the idea that everything has to have a utilitarian base, right? And that there are just things that you do. You mentioned just singing because it's beautiful. I played in a blues band for a few years. I played blues harmonica and I was terrible, but I got such tremendous joy in being on stage. And I'll tell you what, first of all, I was married, so it didn't matter. Second of all, the way I played harmonica wasn't going to attract any women.
it's unclear the harmonica has ever attracted any women. Playing harmonica, I'm not sure this is the thing that grabbed people, but you never know.
Well, it's one step up from being the bass. And so, you gotta give me that. But that being the case, that's the reason I went. It just brought me joy. It was,
Right. And
and
we
some
know that birds experience joy while singing. You can measure that. We have like a lot of ways to measure stuff. We suspect whales enjoy singing because they have a certain kind of neuron in their brains called the spindle neuron. I've seen them. I've gone to the Mount Sinai Medical Center to see the slices of whale brains, to see these neurons, which is only thought to exist in animals with a high ability to experience emotions, like primates. This is the first time they had been seen in whales.
now do only the males sing?
Yes. Well, a lot can be said about that. Basically, yes, only the males sing these long, complex songs in the case of humpback whales. The females make all kinds of sounds in a more social way, usually in the summer where they're feeding. They feed together, talk to each other. A lot of the sounds the females are using, the syllables, are similar to those that appear in the song, but they're not patterned and structured the way the songs are. As biology is being heavily revised these days, many people are pointing out there's a whole bias towards males doing things in biology, and maybe we're missing things that females are actually doing because we're so focused on what males are doing. We know many birds, the female birds, sometimes sing.
And males sing out of breeding season. It was long thought that they bred or that they sang just for hoping to pick up a girlfriend.
Yes. Well, why do we think that? Because it's what other animals do. It's what birds do. Okay, we've been studying this since the 1960s. How often do you think a human has seen a female humpback whale show any interest in the singing behavior of a male? What do you think?
Zero.
Never. Zero. We've never seen it. And then the one study that spent 10 years watching them by Jim Darling, Flip Nicklin, Megan Jones, they watch, most of the time you see nothing because everybody's underwater. Whenever they did see things, which is like 10% of the time, this is what they saw. Two whales, male whales would be like a kilometer apart singing. You can hear that far away, no problem. They'd stop singing, they'd swim together silently, and they'd swim together parallel in silence, separate again, and start to sing again. That's what they saw. What's that about? Nobody knows. It's so anomalous that the more standard papers about humpback whale song don't even quote this observation. And yet no one else has been out observing as much as this team has. They have nothing to counter it with. They just assume the males are singing to attract the attention of females. Nobody's seen humpback whales mate. No one's seen them give birth. People see gray whales do this all the time because they're exhibitionists. They do it right in front of people in Baja, California. But they don't do it in front of people other places. They've gotten used to us. There's a lot of culture in whales. This is one of the things I learned studying this, that among animals, the notion that animals have culture maybe 20, 30 years ago was seen as somewhat radical, and now it's very much accepted. Because what does that mean? It means the same species living different places learns different ways of living, and they just have a different way of life, and it's not genetically determined. It's how they learn from their group.
And I think a great example of that are the orca pods. The orcas hunt differently in different locations around the world.
Yeah, and only off the Mediterranean are they tipping over sailboats.
Yeah, well, that's a behavior we hope they don't transfer over. But
there's an article I saw saying they're not really trying to destroy the boats; they're just trying to play. I was thinking, like, what PR agent did these orcas hire for this article? Like, where does that come from? Why aren't they just fighting back? Like, enough already. So many good reasons to get rid of sailboats. I think the orcas know exactly what they're doing. But that being said, in other parts of the world, they're known for helping fishermen catch fish. And there's a whole thing I wrote about in my book. The Bay of Eden Bay in Australia, where the orcas work together with fishermen to help them catch fish until one time somebody killed an orca and then they stopped doing it. It doesn't happen anymore. Like the culture changed. That's a famous Australian story. There's a feature film about it. There's a lot of articles and books. And then if you watch, National Geographic, Secrets of the Whales, you'll see what everyone wants to see: the whale go up on the beach and grab a seal and drag it underwater. So the orcas do that off in South America somewhere, but the very same species in Antarctica hangs out with the seals and they fish together like they're friends. They just live differently. They have different culture. And I was very impressed that TV show emphasized that and said, whales have culture. Let us show you how it happens. And that's not what they would have done 20 years ago.
I was up in the Inside Passage of Alaska over the summer on a National Geographic vessel, and was doing a little research for that book that I'm writing. And one of the things that I learned while I was up there is that the resident orcas, the resident pods, live in harmony with the stellar sea lions and whatnot. It is the transient pods that come in from the open ocean. That come in and start slaughtering the other.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good anti-immigrant story. Perfect. Ones we don't know.
I had not framed it or even thought of it that way, but now, of course, I'm going to be stuck with that image in my head.
Even in the Grizzly Man, Timothy Treadwell, he gets eaten by a bear he didn't know, one that comes from outside. The other bears he knew for years, they were his friends. He talked to them. So you just don't know what's going to happen. So what's your book going to be about? What's the theme that holds it together?
This particular book is called American Safari: Zoos Without Fences.
Okay.
And it's roughly 30 places you can go in the country that if you go at the exact time and to the exact location, you're virtually guaranteed to see either the raptor, about 6 chapters are on raptors, or the mammal, marine or terrestrial. And so it's just a way for people that might not have the enthusiasm to go look for 10 or 12 days for something. If you go to San Simeon Beach in January, you're going to see bull elephant seals.
Do you know a lot about raptors? I have a raptor observation for you. Are you a raptor?
I wrote a book about raptors.
So what is this phenomenon that's been going on for months outside my house? There's these 2 hawks that Merlin says, I think, are red-shouldered hawks. And they sit on top of telephone poles. Each has like something to eat. One has a snake. The other has like a rat, and they're just going. And another one they're right close by. They're so close by. You never see these things. And they're so prevalent that the starlings have started imitating this loud shrieking sound.
Do you have forest close to you? Because
the
red-shouldered hawks are more forest birds.
Yeah, the forest is right here. Yeah.
Yeah, then that may very well be what they are.
But this isn't. Yeah, but this behavior, I think and then they leave these things on top of the poles like the dead snake. No one else can come get it, and they come back and get it. And you can watch all these things that they're eating, and they're really.
That's a bit of surprising behavior. I'm not familiar with that. Most raptors are not food storage animals, like say a shrike is. They're
not shrikes, but they are. But it's very sort of strange activity, and The other day I was away for a little while. I heard the shrieking a little bit distant, but then I heard the starlings imitating it, which seems like something they would do early in the morning. It's such a ubiquitous, strange sound that's. I just never seen this activity before.
I'm going to ask a couple people because I am certainly not familiar with raptors leaving prey, unless they're scared off it.
On top of a telephone pole, like they're nearby. I decided they were brothers, just like arguing about stuff. But
see, there's a possibility. Is it possible they're trying to pay you rent for use of your backyard?
Yeah, exactly. There used to be chickens around here, but other kinds of hawks would eat those.
Have you tried playing the clarinet with hawks?
I should. The closest was when I was in high school in my early bird phase. I had this summer job project working on an Earthwatch expedition. They would invite high school kids to go for free. And I was working with Dr. Dave DeSanti of the Point Reyes Bird Observatory, but we were in the Sierras. We would catch birds on one side of the valley, put these little bands on them, and then let them go. And then other days we'd have to watch what the birds were doing and draw on this little map, because they all have these bands we had put on where the birds are going here and there. And I remember there was this goshawk that I was sort of tracking on my map. I had lost track of him, and then he sort of I heard a rustling, and he was on a tree next to me looking at my map when I was like trying to chart where he was going. So I was thinking like, I'm not sure this is really science what I'm doing here, but it's definitely fun. And sometimes that's when I started playing along with the sounds. But I would definitely play with raptors. These are good ones to play along with.
There you go.
I haven't done it, but I've played with a lot of catbirds are the best interactive birds around here, especially during the pandemic. They would like
Are they really?
yeah, especially during the pandemic, they would come out after dinner, like, what do you got? And start performing like next to the table. And during the pandemic, nature was much more prevalent. All kinds of animals were around. Yeah. So I've tried out different bird species around. And
Okay. All right. The great bird's a cool
usually if
bird.
you have brown thrashers, you could play with them. Nothing's going to stop them from singing. I'm not sure they're so interested in what anyone else is doing, but mockingbirds, I don't think they're so interested in what anyone else is doing. I don't know if anyone listens to mockingbird song. What do you think? I'm not sure the females are paying attention. When they get aggressive, they kind of attack each other, but they're not doing it vocally. We're not talking about whales. Birds, a lot more is known about birds because you see them. You see what they're doing. These whales, you hear something, maybe one surfaces, maybe you can swim with them. But
I did have that. I have had that good fortune, by the way.
Yeah. What kind of whales are you swimming with?
Back in the 70s when I was studying marine biology off the Southern California coast,
Mm-hmm.
I used to get to swim with the humpbacks and the grays. We would go out on 3-man teams. We had these zodiacs. We were doing research on an island out there, and we'd run out and take turns. You'd get dropped off in front of the whales and get to hang out while they swam by, and then everybody got one turn, and then that was as much stress as we wanted to put on it for the day. But I got to tell you, man, you may very well have done it, but looking in the eyeball of a humpback whale will give you a certain perspective.
Yeah, I like how they suddenly appear. You're in the water. The water seems like clear and you see nothing. And all of a sudden the whale appears like, whoa. And then,
Yeah, it is amazing. Now, backing up a little bit to the humpbacks there and culture, we had talked briefly about culture. There are different songs around the world, right? Different.
Yes. I mean, the standard story is that in every ocean, there's one song that changes from year to year and all the whales change it together. Whereas in many birds, you get the sense individuals want to distinguish themselves from others by singing differently. The whales sort of all want to sing the same song. That's the standard story.
Which would seem to run counter to the idea that it's breeding based.
Exactly, this kind of thing. But what is breeding means a lot of different things. Who knows? One theory based on what I told you earlier is that for the males to mate, they have to get into this kind of collective mood. Like with frogs and insects, they're all singing together, right? Why do they make all that sound? One study of frogs, it's kind of like the nightclub study where a female frog, would much rather just meet one male alone, but can't because they're all at the club going all together. Nobody wants to go, but you have to go. Where are you going to find a mate? Which I think is pretty funny. That idea. They'd rather not have to do it. But nevertheless, that kind of sound is very collective. What katydids are doing, tree crickets, they all together form this thrumming sound. Clearly, the individuals aren't so different from each other, but they're all part of this musical mood. So maybe the whales are doing something like that. But that being said, any of these generalizations, it turns out that someone is disagreeing with it. People are listening more closely now and saying, look, every whale is a lot more different from every other one. We just haven't been paying enough attention because we've been too stuck in our own story. It'd be natural to assume that a lot is going on we can't perceive what these whales are doing. We think it all sounds the same, but there might be all kinds of differences that matter to the whales, but not to us.
I have to believe there are.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to believe that somewhere embedded in that sound is a signature.
Yeah, that's what's often said about toothed whales and dolphins. Nobody has proposed that humpback whales have a signature, but orcas are supposed to, and we have a lot of evidence they do. Dolphins, they use sound a whole different way. A lot of people tend to generalize with whales. Whales do this, whales do that. But every species is like a world into itself. It's natural to generalize like that because it's all different from us. We want to say something about all whales, and it's very hard to get the specifics right. The people get it. All the work doing now with sperm whales to try and use technology to decode what they're saying as a kind of language is the kind of thing you can do when you have a lot of data of a lot of disconnected, clicking social sounds. You couldn't really do that with humpbacks the same way because the way they use sound.
Now, sperm whales are clickers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the sounds they make, we would consider them clicks.
Some of them, they make clicks and whistles and they make echolocation sounds. Most people don't think humpback whales do echolocation with their sound, except Eduardo Mercado, who's about to release a book called Why Do Whales Sing? He's the only humpback whale scientist who says it's all a kind of sonar. He's a total radical. It's coming out any day now. I'm looking forward to getting a copy.
So is it going to be buried, or in 30 years is he going to be a
He's such
genius?
a nice guy. Everybody likes him. It's more like, it's just he has a different point of view. So
Okay. Well, I think that's important. So backing up for a moment to the sperm whales, would you consider their clicks and whistles to be music or
That's a
musical?
great question. I mean, I don't think they're performed songs the way humpback whale songs are. Why not? Because the humpback whales they're performing a whole series of patterns over and over and over again that are organized, that have a kind of form and shape and emotional, like musical content. Like you don't just go, you have to go, ooh, ooh, ooh. It's like it has those elements of music that are harder to quantify, not the note and how long it's played, how many times you do it, but how you go from soft to loud, how you add a certain tonality, these musical qualities of timbre and shape that are harder to elucidate. Okay, sperm whales are clicking back and forth for different reasons. They're doing it for echolocation, to find their prey, to find out what's around. They're making other sounds to identify what group they're from, what family, what clan. And they traditionally called codas by Hal Whitehead, who wrote probably the best book ever on a single animal species about sperm whales. There's no book as good on any animal. It's an incredible book. And he
Well,
did it spending years and years and years watching them, traveling with them, paying attention to them. Now you have people who says, let's turn all the sound into data. We stick it into an AI. We'll tell you what it means. I don't think that's very likely, personally, but I can see why it's an appealing thing to try out, why it sounds really cool. But they wouldn't have done anything of what they're doing without the work of Hal Whitehead and Lindy Weilgart, spending decades paying attention to these whales. And there's quite a few sperm whale scientists who would agree with me and say, hey, taking it all as data is really leaving out all the experience we have, years spending time with the whales, observing them, learning.
Are you suggesting they did something valuable without the use of ChatGPT?
You mean the whales? The whales have done a lot valuable without ChatGPT.
The early researchers, I meant, yes.
They have their own things. ChatGPT is not quite prepared for whales.
Okay.
Who knows? It might be, but the whole movement to use. I mean, this is a very interesting development to use. Machine learning in translation is quite impressive. And it comes from this project. Oh, what is it called? I'll think of it. Asa Raskin, the son of the inventor of the Macintosh, started this organization to be able to use machine learning to translate the language of animals, because it worked so well translating between French and German and English. Without knowing anything about what's going on, they could be like 70% accurate. Even like 5-6 years ago, they were amazed by this. So, French and German works together. Let's just put like human and dolphin. It's going to be great. But I met him and asked him, I said, well, the French and German people are kind of doing the same things, so it's going to work. But the dolphins and the humans are not doing the same things. So don't you think you might need to learn a little bit more than the machine is going to learn? He goes, yeah, well, that is a fair critique. But it sounds so cool. They can get so much money from this, from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is known to throw a lot of money at problems as long as they can be in charge and they can believe technology can solve the problem. Well, now we know that doesn't always work. You can see where that goes. It's in the news every day, what algorithms are telling us to do, because they're not applying human perspective and thinking to the problem, and instead just using data and thinking that the data can find its own way. Now, I'm one of those people who believes that artificial intelligence isn't really about intelligence. I would agree with my friend Gary Marcus here that it's a new way to package the information that's already out there on the internet, to put it together, to fool us to think that there's intelligence there. A lot of what people are doing, we think it's intelligent, but maybe it really isn't. You can ask AI to make a podcast between two guys in their 60s talking about whales, and it'll do it. And it's going to sound okay, which is pretty frightening.
A little bit.
What it means is there's an aspect of what we're doing that is based on the sum total of knowledge out there that's less personal, less individualistic, less based on our own conscience and intelligence and consciousness than we think. I find that pretty disturbing. So I'm desperate to find things to do that cannot be subsumed into rote learning and artificial intelligence. One thing I like to do is go out in the real world and play music with animals who are not on the internet. So they haven't been scanned yet. Like all of my books have been scanned, and I can, the AI knows what's in them. So I know that they're out there, but a lot of things going on in the world are not there. And so like what the whales are thinking, what sounds are going on in a pond, and bring people out there and you have these live experiences. That seems ever more important in this age where so much is turned into media, such that the wonder of hearing a whale song, you can just go online and hear 200 different humpback whale songs right now. And it wasn't that long ago when no one even knew these songs existed. Like, think how much has changed, and yet how little has changed. Like, we have no idea how to solve the greatest problems of our age, but we have so much cool stuff to listen to and watch.
Well, I think, I'm a little disconcerted by the whole AI thing. I'm a bit of a romantic.
We have to be romantics if we're going to live and enjoy life. And like, look, just what you said about playing blues harmonica. It was so fun. You did it for the joy. You don't need to just listen to a great harmonica player. You needed to play and do it. It doesn't matter whether you think it was good or not. You had this joy of doing it, and that's part of what it means to be alive.
Well, you were talking about your books being scraped. I've written a lot of Westerns, and I tried to make them accurate, to the period and the geography and stuff. And in one of the books, I had guys that had to ride from, I don't know, Denver to somewhere in northern Montana, and I created a path for them to take. And in part of it, I created a fake creek, just because it was good for the story for that creek to be there. And just for fun, I went through recently on AI and I said, hey, if I was back in the 1860s and I was riding a horse from Denver to whatever the town is in Montana, what would be the most efficient path to take? And AI took a minute and fed back my book to me.
Yeah, what an honor. There you go.
Including the fake creek.
That's right.
That I had embedded in the book, not because I anticipated AI, just because it was in there, but I just think, so how many things am I checking on some version of AI?
The put in was between these two towns, and the thing that it found was your book, because no one else mentioned those exact things.
Yeah, which might explain the number of sales of the book, by the way. But that being said, blue whales, largest animal in the history of the world, to the best of our current knowledge. But the notes that they are singing or making are very, very low.
They're kind of low. Fin whales are lower, but blue whales like very, very low, just a few notes. That's described as a song, but it's nothing like the humpback song from our perspective. Fin whales are a little bit smaller than blue whales. They make this low pulse that's like 32 hertz. You can barely hear it. And then they make another one a few minutes later. And then a few minutes later again. If you speed that up, it's a regular rhythm. That's totally incredible to me. It suggests that the fin whale hears this as some kind of regular rhythm, but it's so slow, no human could recognize it as a beat. And that suggests that they have a whole different sense of time and metabolism, hearing. And that is it's a kind of music. We don't know what it's for, but it's very different. It's like a rhythmic music that's too slow for humans to grasp and too low for us to hear.
It's interesting you would say that about these massive creatures, because at the same time, you have these tiny little creatures, these tiny birds that are singing notes so quickly we can't hear them.
Yeah, they can hear 5 times faster than we can.
Yeah, they blur together as one. So now, I'm not a scientist, but if you think, okay, these are these tiny little animals, and they're always flitting around and working at hyperspeed relative to us. And then you have whales, which live so much longer and are so much larger and seem to be a little more relaxed about the speed of the sounds that they're emitting.
Yeah. And then you also have a lot of counterexamples, such as the 17-year cicada that is silent for 17 years and then makes a huge amount of sound. So that's like the longest beat in the animal world. And they're alive. They're counting. They're trying to somehow know when to come out. So they live for 17 years. They're among the longest lived insects. And they're all preparing to come out. It's like you're playing French horn in a Broadway show, and you have to you have nothing to do for 2 hours. So all of a sudden you go, boo, and then go back to reading your book. Like the cicada is 17 years underground. How could this possibly even be going on? How do they even know? Which is totally.
We had them last year.
Yeah, it was a cicada year.
Pardon?
It was a big cicada year.
Yeah, we had to blow the driveway and the pickleball court and stuff 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
And we found that it changed the natural world a little bit, For example, we had eastern screech owls nest 30 feet from our front door, and then also had them nest across the street. And they don't ever, that's not true. They rarely nest that close. But
Right.
since it was an unlimited food supply,
Yeah, exactly.
there was no competition for territory. And they were laying a larger number of eggs. We had 3 in ours, and they all fledged healthy. And I think the only thing they ate was cicadas.
We'll have to have a study, a long-term study of screech owl populations and 17-year cicadas. This could be good PR for the cicadas if they're increasing the population of owls and other birds.
I have to believe they are kind of like the lemmings, up in the Arctic, increase the owl populations, when they're
Oh, yeah.
those eruption years. And so, and I don't know. I don't know.
There probably is some good lemming research out there.
And probably more than there is cicada research. Look, certainly cicada owl. I wanted to ask you about a couple of these things, going back to the humpback whale. I have a quote here from Roger Payne, who you might want to share a little information about. But he said that the whale song of the 60s was far more beautiful and deep than anything the humpback whales are producing today.
Yeah, that's what you say about the 60s, if you remember it. The music was so much better. That's a great quote.
Remember it if you lived it.
But because, I asked John Carroll, he was like editor of Rolling Stone. He wrote a review of the Whale album. I said, can you tell me, what was it like to hear the humpback whale song for the first time? He says, I don't remember. I don't remember anything from those days. Which is a good answer. But that being said, I was quite intrigued by this comment, and that led me to release my own album of pure whale song recordings called New Songs of the Humpback Whale that I collected from scientists and whale enthusiasts around the world to see how they sounded now. The biggest difference is that we have way better recording technology. So they're more crisp, more high frequencies, more scratchy, more detailed. I would say way more interesting than those famous recordings. And if you go back to the record that you have, it's just one that's used by all these musicians, by Judy Collins, Paul Winter, George Crumb, Alan Hovhaness. They use the one that's the most tonal sounding. A lot of the other ones are pretty weird even then. But I would say what's mostly changed is our ears, the kind of things we listen to. Think that in the 60s, stereo recording had just been invented. Think about it. Now you could have super multi-channel sound recording. It's much more immersive, totally different levels of sound that we don't even use. We could record so much better quality sound than most people care about today. So I would say one of the things I'm doing in December is I'm always talking about these whale songs, how long they are. Like most people, if I do a concert, I'll put a whale on one piece, we'll play it, I'll play along with it. We're going to have this 1 hour long whale meditation session. We just play this long single whale song. People might think it's boring, but we're going to make people listen to it in the dark in this 24 channel ambisonic, sound bath place in Brooklyn. And let's see what that does to you. It's going to be all around you. It's going to be like you're inside the whale and nothing else is going to happen but this song.
And you.
I'm not doing anything except playing it for that part of the show. I'm just going to make people listen to this long song. I've never done it. Listen to a whole hour of whale without doing anything. I transform it. I'll play it into something. But to actually sit back and try and take it all in.
And I'm reminded as a kid, I grew up in Southern California, Griffith Park Observatory. I don't know that they still do them, but they used to do these star shows at night, and they would pick these albums. And one of the albums that they played, it was the same thing. You would go in this case, you would listen to the whole album. And once it was Pink Floyd. So you can imagine what occurred inside the observatory in the 70s with Pink Floyd. And we're all lying on our backs, staring up at these fake stars on the ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, that's what planetariums are for, things like that. And you look at Dark Side of the Moon, it's becoming classical music. People are playing it note for note all over the world. And 100 years from now, they're going to be doing that if we survive. This is going to be classical music. This is how things become classical and they emerge and keep being done. And I always say the oldest, most classical music we know are songs made by birds, bugs, and whales because they're millions of years old. There must be something right about this. We don't know anything in human culture what's really right, how long is it going to survive. You can be sure that when Pink Floyd was making these albums, they didn't think that people would want to play them note for note decades later. They didn't realize how it would seep into the culture. But that's what happens.
Well, I think it's a spectacular thing. Now, we've got humpback whale songs floating out in space.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. There's a great book about that called Alien Listening. What was sent into outer space and how how did they even do anything like that? Who could possibly imagine doing it today, that NASA would send some cultural document out into the universe and that people would manage to agree on what should be on such a document? The only reason they did it then is because Carl Sagan and his wife, they were just given carte blanche to explain humanity in a symbolic, simple way. No giant committees, just two people doing it. It's a great story. The
And
Humpback
and
Whale song appears, by the way, in the language section, not in the music section, as how you say hello in different languages. They put whale on there somehow. It's not one of the musical selections that's being picked.
so I wanted to ask you, oh, you know what I did want to ask you about is National Geographic and the 10 million little albums that were inserted.
Yes, so we love National Geographic. National Geographic at one point was this huge cultural force published in 25 languages, everywhere. And they printed a sound page, a kind of little flexible record album. And supposedly it's the greatest single pressing of any album ever because they printed 10 million of them all at once. And now National Geographic is not quite what it used to be, but it's still considered an amazing thing to have done that. I have a copy of that issue, but the sound page isn't in it. But
Oh, that's too bad.
I remember it. It was 1970, and I remember that it happened. I remember playing these things, and I was very happy years later to do a whale story for National Geographic, because since I wrote my book in 2008, I'd been bothering them. You have to do something, humpback whale song. You did this thing, 79, let's do it. And their eyes would glaze over, like, what are you talking about? And then I got a random call 20 years later, we really want to do this. And I said, oh, I've been trying to get you to do this for decades. Yeah, we don't know. None of us has worked here more than like 2 months. So we need it right now. And so that was good.
And that was what, back in 2021?
Yeah, the end of the pandemic. And they had this really beautiful interactive online feature, which seems to work halfway now. So I'm glad I put the whole thing on YouTube before they messed it up. If you know anything about National Geographic, it was sold to Disney. Many different people have been fired and hired there. They don't quite have a complete handle on everything that's going on, just like everything else in the media landscape today. So it's good I'm glad they did it. It's great that, it still continues, but it's very hard to do something like what they're doing in an age when there's so much media competition.
Yeah, it's well, our attention span is not what it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
So do me a favor, and maybe even yourself a favor, but tell us about your books. Walk us through your books so that the audience will know which books you've published.
Yeah, we'll limit to some of the ones that are from the first trade book that I did, like for the general public, was Why Birds Sing, 2005. And that's me trying to figure out why birds sing by playing along with them, traveling around the world to play music with different birds and talk about the science and culture and poetry and history of people trying to understand what birds are doing. But all of these books from that moment had this participatory side, like I wanted to join in with the animals I'm studying, something that not all readers appreciated. Some people thought, like, he's just writing about himself instead of the birds, But that being said, on the last page of the book, I tell you why birds sing. So if you go to the end, the answer is there.
Are you going to give us a hint, or do we need to get the book?
You should read at least the last page. Yeah, you should read it. I would say that the clue, the hint is they sing for the same reason people sing.
Okay, same reason I play harmonica.
Basically, something like that. And then after that, I said, I really want to do whales because nobody knew about whale song until the 1950s. So that book was originally called 1,000 Mile Song in 2008. And then I published a new edition with a new name, Whale Music, all the way I wanted it, with cool color pictures and a whole revised section of what's happened over the 15 years in between. And so I recommend the new version, Whale Music, because it's got so many cool pictures. Okay. And then I did a book.
Are they your pictures or others?
No, a lot of them by Wade and Robin Hughes, these incredible photographers from Australia. Not very known. They're only known in Australia. Nobody's seen these photos. They never published in National Geographic, for example. And it just shows there's so much great stuff being done by people that we just don't know about from all over the world. Then I wrote a book called Survival of the Beautiful that wasn't really about sound. It's about why beauty evolves in nature, something we've already talked about a bit. And there I talked more about visual art and about the notion that some animals, some of them have evolved the need to make art, like bowerbirds in Australia make these incredible sculptures, often erroneously called nests, but they're sculptures to impress the females, who usually are not very impressed. They come look at it and go, yeah, that's not interesting. Next. It's definitely the male bowerbirds are making these things, and the females are assessing their quality. And so, but I want to take off from that idea, like, why is there beauty in nature? Is it arbitrary? Is it random, the way natural selection, the way evolution is supposed to work? Or is it based on certain forms and principles and structures that are kind of universally out there in the fabric of nature, in chemistry and physics and things like that? So it bounces off this dichotomy of what's arbitrary and what's determined by the nature of the physical world. And then I wrote a book called Bug Music that came out during a big cicada year, 2013. And I wanted to talk about insects being the oldest musicians we know and the roots of our interest in rhythm, repeating sounds. I imagined humanity evolving in a world full of bug sounds and saying, wow, this sounds cool. And then I took a few years in between. I went to Berlin for a year, was playing music with Nightingales, and wrote a book called Nightingales in Berlin, which
Tell us about it.
I was very intrigued that I'd heard that Berlin, this city, had a lot of nightingales, and you could go out into the parks and hear them. And I said, "Oh, does that mean everyone's jamming with them, playing music with them?" It turned out that wasn't so. Something people really did. I said, "Berlin has to be a good place to do that. There's so many interesting musicians there, and refugees from Syria and Iran and such. It's going to be so many great musicians. We're going to bring them all out. We're going to play with the nightingales." That's what we did. So I've been doing that every spring for many years now. I made a film about this called Nightingales in Berlin, which you could find at least on Vimeo. It's online. And that turned out to be a really fun project. It took many years longer than I thought to come out.
As so many projects do.
Then since then, I did a book about underwater pond sounds, which are also quite amazing. Like if you stick a microphone, a hydrophone in the water in a pond, you're going to hear something that sounds like crazy electronic music, and including the famous little bug this big called the lesser water boatman. He's making a sound as loud as a whale, vibrating his penis underwater. This is a crazy sound. And it's right there. It's very easy to hear. And nobody knew anything about this until you start to listen where you didn't think there was anything to hear. And the next book I'm writing is about the dawn chorus of birds. Why do birds wake up at dawn and sing? What do you think? What's your explanation?
I think that they are a high energy animal and they burn through a ton of energy during the night just staying alive. And they've got to get food almost immediately upon waking up.
Yeah, but
Would be my guess.
Food, they're singing. They're not getting food. Why are they singing instead of getting food? That comes next. The singing and food are not the same time.
Is it their announcement to the world that they're still alive and getting ready to start their day?
Could be something like that. Could be.
Or could be what else?
It could be, why sing all at the same time if you're trying to communicate to your own kind? Nightingales are singing at night. No one else is singing. That's pretty smart. They have the sonic field to themselves. Many birds tick certain frequencies, but why do it all together when it's all kind of a jumbled mess? Do they listen to each other? Are they, we don't know. One idea was that sound travels better at dawn, so it can be heard further away. It's a good time to sing. That was refuted recently in a study done by some Cornell scientists. Not true. Doesn't sound any better. And so it's kind of the kind of mystery that I like. And I'm quite interested in how this orientation leads you towards the whole sound of the ecosystem rather than the individual. When I started doing this kind of work, it was like me and a bird, me and one whale. It was individualistic. Often in Hawaii, where I'm often going to play music with humpback whales, there's too many whales. You just hear everybody singing together. You can't really interact with one. You feel like you're just joining into the whole chorus. And so this dawn chorus thing is about the collective in a way. The whole ecology of sound. What I'm going to conclude, who knows, but I have a lot of good material.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's refreshing to have somebody who is out doing the research and has not already drawn the conclusion.
Yeah, I have no conclusions to any of it. People always ask, like, the most common question to ask, which you haven't asked, is how does it feel to play music with a whale? And usually I say, well, I don't know. Here's the music. Here's what we did. Listen to it. You tell me what it feels like. And just doing it, it feels like something that needs to be done. I feel like it's an emotional journey, emotional activity, but I feel like it's the music that explains the emotion, which begs the question, why then go and write all these books about something you can't really explain? I remember talking to Peter Gabriel, the pop star, about this. Like, Peter, you should write a book. He goes, no, I'm not going to write a book. Like, why not? Oh yeah, you write a book, then people will argue with you. If it's music, they don't argue with it. They might like it, they might dislike it, but they kind of respect it. You start to put words on the page, you're asking for trouble, which I thought was pretty good.
He could write it now and have it published posthumously, and
Right. This one book that's Where is it? So on this somewhere on this shelf. At least he was one of the writers of this book. I don't see it right now. But yeah, I think that it does make me wonder exactly why I want to explain and tell these stories when they do get you asking for trouble. When I wrote Why Birds Sing, scientists were saying, why are you criticizing us so much? We have enough problems. Why are you writing in this critical way instead of this embracing descriptive way? And I said, because you're not asking the right questions. And one scientist over at Chernikovsky says, you're right. You're right. Let's study your questions. Let's go for it. So we spent 5 years working on this study of the musicality of birdsong, something I thought scientists weren't taking seriously. And it was quite an illuminating journey.
You think they're taking it more seriously now than they have historically?
Some people are, yeah, definitely. And I've worked on several papers with teams of scientists where musicality is something you can measure. It's not just humanly subjective and what they're doing is objective. It's a different kind of question to ask. So I think we're getting some respect for that idea.
Okay. I have to ask because I'm just curious. Outside of animals, who are your favorite musical artists?
You mean the same people I like to listen to, or people who've
Yes.
influenced me? Or, like many people, I'm mostly listening to music in the car. Some kinds of music works well in the car, and it's usually different than the things I would say I listen to. Like I would say I'm listening to all this interesting, ethereal European jazz, a lot of things associated with the ECM label that I like a lot. But then when I'm actually listening to the car, it's like pop music and things that from different parts of the world that kind of grab you, and they're good for driving. It's not what I say I listen to. But I would say, what have I heard that people should listen to recently? Uh, see this. The new album by the great pianist Amina Claudine Myers is pretty good. She's playing solo. She's in her 80s. She's kind of underrepresented, kind of experimental jazz musician who's now playing kind of more minimal style, representing a life of like seeing a lot, hearing a lot. So she's someone who hasn't been heard enough from. So I recommend that.
Okay.
And many other things. But yeah, and again, I think we should all hear as much live music as we can, because that's the way music is supposed to be. Even recordings are one step back from what music really should be, a live experience that you play or listen to, people together sharing. And I think we're starting to value those experiences more, as we should, because there's so much media available at any moment. A live musical experience is not just media. It's an experience shared between people in a unique place that's going to happen once and never again.
There's a lot to be said for that. To your point, I know there's a number of bands that I've seen multiple times, and there are certain individual concerts that stand out as having been better. They might have even had the same playlist, but whether it was the band's energy or the crowds or the symbiotic relationship between the two, it was just better.
The live thing.
Yeah, live, definitely. I mean, even when I used to buy albums, I always preferred to buy the live albums. I liked the mistakes, the interaction between the artist and the audience. I found that to be very enjoyable.
Yeah, I heard Bob Dylan play for the first time like a month ago. And it was definitely a sort of strangely spiritual experience. And I'd read a lot about what his concerts are like some melody begins that you recognize, and he sings a totally different song on top of it, that he's hiding in a hoodie behind the piano. Is it actually him? He looked more like Eminem. You could barely see him. And yet he's doing exactly what you don't expect. Like it's beyond the songs that you know. And then I started to think, like, are any of these concerts released, these strange live shows? And no, except since in the 70s there are live Dylan albums, and they have some of the same quality already. But what he's doing now, I think, is meant to only be experienced live so far.
Well, I hope he's enjoying it. I hope the audience that goes enjoys it.
Someone asked him, like, Bob, you're like almost 84. Like, why are you still touring? Why are you still doing it? Well, he said, have to keep up my side of the bargain, which I guess means selling your soul at the lonely crossroads to the devil.
I was going to say, is it down in Mississippi and
yeah, have to keep doing
it at the crossroads? Because
exactly, yeah.
I've been there and I didn't see Bob.
It's a good answer, yeah. Right.
And apparently my soul wasn't worth very much because I didn't get any better with the harmonica, but I gave it a shot. Hey, I asked you before we started recording if you had a book that you would recommend to the audience.
Yeah, I changed my mind what the book's going to be after what we talked about.
Okay, fair enough.
Recommending now is a book called If Nietzsche Were a Narwhal by Justin Gregg. He's a Canadian dolphin scientist.
Okay.
If Nietzsche were a narwhal, got to be one of the best titles ever.
It's going to stick with me.
And what it's about is like people's attempts to figure out how we're different from animals. Whatever you think only humans do, there's some animals that do it, like using tools, having a really good memory, having a language and culture. There's animals doing all this stuff. One thing he comes up with that separates humans from animals. What do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Moral outrage. Only humans get really, really upset about people in our community doing something. Like homosexuality appears all over the animal world, but only humans say, I'm shocked. I'm shocked this is happening in our community. You must be punished. You got to get out. The animals, it's like, whatever you're into, you know. This notion goes right along with what keeps people on social media and the internet. Moral outrage, what gets us so upset.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not what keeps me playing music with animals. Not outrage. It's just the fun of it, the coolness, the possibility, the connection to something wider. And the fact that, you know, what it is that really has always fascinated us about animals. We know that they're just like us, but maybe different. Let's test the limits. How much are they like us? How much are they different? We have always been fascinated with that border, the uncanny.
Well, and we do seem very determined to find the one thing that we can do. And maybe it is moral outrage. And I mentioned that book, The Arrogant Ape by Christine Webb. And that's one of the constant themes throughout her book is all of the different things that only humans could do that it turned out wasn't true.
Yeah, it's definitely something I should read. I'm sure she knows the Narwhal book.
Well, I'm going to read it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you having been here, David. This has been a treat.
Thanks so much for inviting me. If you want to use any sounds, if you want to use any of this music, let me know. Or you could just
I will absolutely do that. Thank you. And then I do want to have you back on so we can focus a little more on birds.
Yes.
Maybe nightingales in Berlin.
We could talk about all the craziest birds. Part of my next project involves them.
I will very much look forward to that.
Improvising bird, the Blythe's reed warbler. This is the bird that Merlin cannot identify. It just doesn't get it. Every other reed warbler it knows. It does not know this bird. It cannot. My friend who's recorded them has uploaded hundreds of hours of recordings of it to BirdNet. It still can't figure it out.
Well, that's interesting.
Tells you something.
I've had a couple people from Cornell on here. I'm going to ask them about it.
Yeah, I pointed out to them too. They go, "Oh, this is interesting." With the hundreds of hours, they might have made some progress towards.
You'd like to think so. Hey, I'm going to throw my email up here on the screen.
Okay.
If you've got any questions or follow-up, send them to me. If you've got any for David, send them to me and I'll get them to him. And if you don't hear back from him, I'll take the heat and say I never sent it to him.
Yeah, I'm not so hard to find, you know.
But
right, I'm not hiding like.
Exactly. If you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, and I hope you are, it's kind of fun to watch, and I'll be throwing, some pictures and different things on top of this as we go into production. But do me a favor and hit subscribe. And the reason for that is we're not making any money. We don't sell ads or anything along those lines on the show. We've declined that, at least so far. It's just that the larger audience that we reach, the more the message gets out. We have great guests, and they've got neat things to say. And if you subscribe or comment or hit like, it benefits them, it benefits us, and frankly, it benefits the audience.
Put in some comments.
So it's kind of it's kind of a fun thing. So we'll see what happens.
Don't be mean. No moral outrage, please. We can do better. We can do as good as the narwhal.
Yeah, well, there we go. Well, you know what? I've never aspired to do as good as the narwhal, and now I'm going to look into that. So we'll see. At the end of every one of these, David, you may not know, I throw a field notes on here where I pick an animal or a park or something and spend 5-6 minutes talking about it. So I'll pick something from our conversation and tag it on there. And as I wrap up this, and as I do every time, I'm going to tell people that when you're outside, and I really hope you are, I hope you're only inside watching this podcast, and then you're outside learning to play the clarinet or listen to Nightingales. But always remember to stay safe and stay curious. David, thank you so much for being with me today, man.
It's been a pleasure.
This was a treat. I enjoyed your book and I enjoyed the conversation. I'm already looking forward to the next one. So everybody have a great day.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
Hello and welcome to the 24th edition of Field Notes. This one is following the David Rothenberg podcast. I hope you watched and enjoyed that podcast. And while normally the Field Notes are standalone, this one, it's best if you'd watch the podcast. David Rothenberg is a philosopher and a clarinetist, and he is best known to the public as a man who plays the clarinet with animals. So today's Field Notes is going to celebrate and share that. David sent me a few of his samples of his work, pieces of his work, and I've selected two of them to share with you today. The first one is called The Far Field. It's from the year 2008. It is David playing clarinet with humpback whales. It is different than what you might be used to musically, but it is still fascinating to listen to. And that is followed by one, and I believe I'm pronouncing this correctly, called the Sharawaji Blues, which is David playing with birds in 2019. And this one runs about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. So you've got about 10 minutes worth of music coming up from David Rothenberg. There's plenty more that you can find on YouTube and various different places. He's done some things that have lasted well over an hour, but I thought these two samples of his works would be fantastic to share. I truly, truly, truly hope that you enjoy them. I actually have been using them and listening to them in the background. They're kind of cool. So those two pieces should be following, and send me a note and let me know what you think, what your thoughts are, what questions you might have. But enjoy these two pieces of music, The Far Field with humpback whales and the Sharawaji Blues with birds. David Rothenberg on clarinet. Take care and stay curious.